You probably stumbled in here by mistake. Maybe you were Googling why a superstore's pasta made people sick, or if Gordon Ramsay's Burger King collab is real, or why Dunkin's is suddenly more expensive than Starbucks. Or maybe it was a typo about Bad Bunny, and bam, you're here. Stick around for vampire dieting tips, why you should probably avoid towns called Purgatory, hidden gems so hidden we almost miss them ourselves. But I know you're gonna love sticking around for vampire dieting tips, right? Let's start the show.
Crack open a cold box of wine or pour something cold on ice because it's the Binge-Watchers podcast.
Home video headlines. What's new in the world of TV, movies, streamers, and everywhere else? Rick Moranis. He's coming out of retirement to play Lord Dark Helmet in Spaceballs 2. Now filming with the original cast and some new stars. I love that we're finally getting Spaceballs 2, but I should be in it. I should be playing Barf's son. If Barf was going to have a son, the Mog, right? The John Candy character that played a Mog, half dog, half man. Anyway, I really screwed up by not being the guy making Spaceballs 2. But, not this Josh Gad character. To hell with Josh Gad. Sorry, Gad. Best of luck with Spaceballs 2. And yes, that's Spaceballs envy. AMC Networks, they're developing Down by the River, a crime thriller. I mean, they should have researched the title, realized they named it after the greatest sketch comedy of all time, in which Chris Farley is down by the river. I mean, rename this one pretty quick, or, everyone's gonna think about Down by the River. Do you think everybody forgot about Down by the River? I hope not. Again, do your research. Don't name a show after Chris Farley's sketch unless you know what you're doing. Down by the River. Delta, they're going to stream YouTube content on its planes. It would be real funny if flyers got to see me complaining about Josh Gad's Spaceballs on a Delta flight. The movie of the week. Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat. It's a 1989 horror comedy in the style of a Western, centered on a desert town populated entirely by vampires. The plot follows a human family that unknowingly gets caught in the middle of a civil war between two vampire factions. Alright, in the town of Purgatory, what do we got? A colony of vampires, led by the ancient Count Mortalac. They've settled in a remote desert town of Purgatory. He has forbidden them from feeding on humans. Instead, they're required to drink a synthetic blood substitute produced in the factory. Now, the vampires have adapted to daylight by using high-factor sunblock and special UV-protected windows, sunglasses, etc. Mortalac's goal for the vampires is to coexist peacefully with humans. Then the humans get there, because the synthetic blood factory is malfunctioning, and Mortalac hires a human engineer who designed it, David Harrison, to fix it. David, accompanied by his wife Sarah and their two young daughters, arrive in Purgatory for what he believes is a normal work trip. Then we have a vampiric civil war. That's right. The town elder, Jefferson, leads a vampire rebellion. Jefferson and his followers, who prefer traditional blood-sucking, are resentful of Mortalac's rules and plan to overthrow him and return to their predatory ways. Now David and the family find themselves trapped between the two opposing vampire factions. You got a Van Helsing connection, of course. The vampire family is not the only problem. A descendant of the legendary vampire hunter vampire. Hold on, let me slow down and back up. Alright. A descendant of the legendary vampire hunter Abraham Van Helsing. He's a bumbling, awkward man named Robert Van Helsing. He's like the great-great-grandson or whatever. He shows up in Purgatory to hunt the vampires and then stumbles into the conflict himself. There's a personal complication. David's old college friend Shane is now a vampire and one of Jefferson's followers. He is still obsessed with Sarah, that's the wife, who he had previously had an affair with, and that's part of the conspiracy here. Alright, the climax and the ending. The conflict erupts in a full-blown war where Mortalac's more civilized vampires, fighting against Jefferson's ruthless rebels. During the final showdown, David and Sarah hastily erect a giant cross in the town square. When the sun rises, the light from the cross burns and kills Jefferson and his followers. Surprisingly, Mortalac and his vampires are unharmed by the cross, because Mortalac reveals that because his vampires abstain from human blood, they must have been forgiven on a spiritual level. He also reveals the final twist. He's actually Count Dracula, who changed his name to avoid public attention. Spoiler alert, Mortalac is Dracula. I almost said just Count Dracula from the beginning of this, because saying Mortalac is really silly. Anyway, Dracula and the surviving vampires allow the Harrison family to leave town, finally free of the conflict. They're peaceful vampires now. Robert Van Helsing, however, remains to continue his work along Dracula, his longtime nemesis, but now he's got a completely different persona because he fell in love with a vampire girl. Now he's a vampire. Anyway, this was distributed by a company called Vestron, and Vestron's downfall kind of wrapped up into the Sundown and the Vampire Retreat. The connection is this, because the decline of Vestron Pictures and the '89 film are wrapped up together is one of timing and circumstance. By the time the movie was released, Vestron was deep in a financial crisis that eventually led to its bankruptcy. Here's more about their decline. Vestron Pictures, they were once a major force in the video and independent film market, known for releasing cult classics and hidden movies on home video. However, by '89, the company was in trouble. They were having some financial struggles. The company begins reporting that sizable losses in '89, leading to a substantial decrease in revenue. Failed investments. They were trying to expand into theater film production, met with limited success. They had some expensive projects, some box office flops, contributing to hurting its finances. For example, they say that Highlander 2 was a disaster, often cited as a contributing factor to Vestron's downfall. I'll never say that about Highlander 2, so you didn't hear it from me. Anyway, by '91, Vestron filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Its assets, including the extensive film library, were sold to other companies, and most of their film library is now owned by Lionsgate. What other notable films did they kick out? Check this out. They're known for their home video distribution, but they also released a number of notable films through their production company, Vestron Pictures. Many were niche genre stuff, but here's some of the iconic hits they cranked out. Dirty Dancing, right? That's the company's biggest and most successful theatrical release. The film script was rejected by every major studio before Vestron took it on. You got cult classic horror movies. Let's see. A lot of horror offerings. Check this out. The Lair of the White Worm, a supernatural horror comedy from Ken Russell, loosely based on a Bram Stoker novel. Waxworks, of course, a fantasy film about teenagers trapped in a wax museum where the exhibits come to life. How about The Gate, a horror film about a kids who accidentally unleash demons from a mysterious hole in their backyard. Maximum Overdrive, Stephen King's adaptation of his own short story starring Emilio Estevez. Chopping Mall, a slasher about the murderous security robots that trap and kill teenagers in a shopping mall. Chud 2, Bud the Chud, a sequel to the 1984 horror film about flesh-eating monsters. Blood Diner, a campy horror comedy about cannibalistic brothers trying to resurrect an ancient goddess. Here's some other notable films. Beyond the standout horror film titles, check this out. They also had Little Monsters '89, fantasy comedy where Fred Savage and Howie Mandel, right? A boy befriends a monster under his bed. There's like an alternate dimension where the monsters hang out. That's a good one. You guys should see that. Earth Girls Are Easy '88, musical science fiction comedy with Gina Davis, Jeff Goldblum, and Jim Carrey. That one's great. Blue Steel, that's the thriller where Jamie Lee Curtis is a rookie cop being tormented by a serial killer. The Wraith, a supernatural action film starring Charlie Sheen. That one's kind of nutty. Have you seen that one? It's like he and his girlfriend get killed. He comes back for revenge. It's almost like The Crow, kind of, right? Yeah, except he has like a supernatural car that's like high tech, and he comes back to get revenge on the bad dudes. I don't know, teenage gang or whatever. All right, Parents, a dark comedy about a boy who suspects his parents are cannibals. Young Guns, how about that? They handle the home video distribution for the popular Western. I did not know that. Also Class of '99. That's in the future where like the high school has androids and a bunch of crazy stuff happening. Dagon, that's an H.P. Lovecraft adaptation. I did not know they handled Dementia 13, which is Francis Ford Coppola. It's about a scheming widow suspected in a series of axe murders. I mean, that's a pretty notorious horror movie. Dementia 13. They did The Dentist and The Dentist 2. Ghoulies 3. Ghoulies Go to College. That's where it's starting to fall apart. Hider in the House. I don't know what that's about. Gothic. I know about that movie. My best friend's a vampire. Teenage boy becomes a vampire and must learn to survive with the help of his best friend and a seasoned vampire hunter. That one's entertaining. Oh, I didn't know they had a part in May, which is about a veterinarian's assistant who descends into madness trying to build a perfect doll of human body parts. May's actually a pretty good horror movie. The Unholy 88, we covered that recently. We already mentioned that they had the Waxwork collection. Oh, I did not know they also did the Warlock collection. That's they got a 3-film box set on that one, huh? Oh, and Wishmaster, of course. We covered those recently. All right, we'll be right back with our favorite bits from Sundown, the Vampire in Retreat right after these messages. All right. What am I diving into on Paramount Plus right now? I got some space epics I was watching, some dark comedies. Here's what I've been watching. Extract, Lions for Lambs, The Dead Don't Hurt, Interstellar, Event Horizon, Deep Space Nine, South Park, and Casa Bonita, mi amor. You want to watch along with me? Then you got to hit up my Paramount Plus link and stream your next obsession right now. All right, now back to the show, already in progress with our favorite bits from the Vestron classic, Sundown, the Vampire in Retreat. I think the premise is super interesting, but it can't easily be explained. It's got a great cast: David Carradine as Count Dracula, Bruce Campbell as Van Helsing. I mean, it was probably too weird when it got released, and I think it had to wait for its audience to grow up, right? I think my generation and maybe the one behind us loves it. You discover it on home video, and then it's more widely available now on streamers all of a sudden, so you can definitely find it now. There was a time you couldn't really get your hands on it unless you had the video copy, either be it a VHS or DVD or what have you, or a ripped copy that somebody was floating around on like Napster or something. I don't know. That's just for music. I don't think there was a Napster for movies. LimeWire, maybe? I don't know. People are sharing movies. That Pirate Bay bullshit? Who knows? Maybe the Video Internet Archive? Who the hell knows? Yeah, but now it's on like Tubi and Plex and probably everything else. Anyway, I like the idea of the fake blood supply. That's intriguing. It's a vampire western before we get stuff like From Dusk Till Dawn and Sinners. The twist ending is killer stuff. Vampires finding faith? Question mark. Right? All right. We have a special, patented, magical, mystical, great movie rating system on here. I think it's the best there ever was. No other rating systems can compare. Forget your 5 stars, your popcorn boxes, your woofing dogs, whatever you're rating movies with. We got binge now, binge later, or binge never. Can you figure that out? Binge now, watch it now. Binge later, put it on the list, just get around to it. Binge never, you can't get the time back. You've wasted your life. You might as well be licking walls. Don't watch the movie, okay? All right, this is a binge now. Something different and lighthearted involving vampires, but also has introspective moments, just like What We Do in the Shadows did, but before that came out. So even this is a precursor to all that stuff. All right. Fan service. If the fans are chiming in, what are they squawking about? Sarah asked if we'd seen The Witcher because we're all hyped about, Henry Cavill doing the Highlander. And she says the Highlander sucks. Now, to be clear, those are her words. I dread saying it. So don't clip me saying it. Those are her words, all right? I think The Witcher sucks after a few episodes. The Witcher and the Witch don't bang anymore, and the monsters get less and less interesting, and the songs get, they get more and more annoying. All right. Yeah, because there's like a guy in there, a minstrel. He's following the Witcher around. He's playing his theme songs when he goes about town. Whatever. Staff picks. What can we recommend besides the movie of the week? There's a 1988 comedy film called The Couch Trip. It's about an escaped mental patient named John Burns impersonating a psychiatrist and becoming an overnight celebrity on a radio talk show in Beverly Hills. His unconventional and candid style is far from the standard psychiatric approach, and that makes him widely popular with listeners. Let's break down the plot. It involves a patient's clever escape. The mental patient is played by Dan Aykroyd. He's facing a transfer to prison, so he intercepts a phone call intended for his own psychiatrist, Dr. Beard, and who's a stressed out radio. There's also a radio host in Beverly Hills named Dr. George Maitland who's stressed out and has a breakdown and needs a temporary replacement. So Burns pretends to be Beard, flies to Los Angeles. He does a candid, often profane advice on the radio, and it becomes a huge hit, making him more popular than the original host. Along the way, he befriends a kleptomaniac drifter and former priest named Donald Becker. It's Walter Matthau. So when the real Dr. Baird and Maitland discover Burns' ruse, they try to expose him. However, their erratic behavior makes them seem like they're the unstable ones, and they're mistaken for imposters. In the chaotic climax, Burns finds himself at the Hollywood sign trying to take down Donald Becker, who's climbed up there and is threatening to jump. The authorities arrive, and both Burns and Maitland are apprehended, and Maitland's reputation is ruined. Burns is arrested, but eventually rescued by Becker and his former colleague, Dr. Laura Rollins, whose deception has been revealed earlier. Burns and Becker make a getaway together. It's pretty funny. Okay, I'd planned to cover the couch trip at some point, and I even considered it for this this run, but I didn't. This is why. Before I was gonna. So anyway, Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat is Anthony Hitchcock, and he made the Waxworks movies, which I love. We've covered the Waxworks and Waxworks 2. We've talked about his career. Unfortunately, he passed away recently, within the last, 3 or 4 years or something like that. He's like an iconic horror director, and both TV and movies. And he makes Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat. I mean, the company that puts it out collapses. It doesn't get its theatrical run. People don't really know about it. It's not marketed. And it gets shelved, and like I said, becomes like a cult favorite on home video. It's definitely something we should have covered in the past. I think we brought it up on an episode of like some of our favorite vampire movies, but never really gave it the full treatment, like on a full episode. And I said we're doing like this eccentric thing, the weird movies in September. It's wrapping up, and I'm like, I slid the entry in here, but I did go and evaluate the couch trip because I was looking at a Dan Aykroyd movie with Jack Lemmon actually called like Getting Away with Murder or something like that. And it just was bleak, and I didn't want to necessarily cover that in this lineup. And then I was like, oh, maybe we'll go back to the couch trip. Let me rewatch that. It's a favorite of mine. Walter Matthau and Dan Aykroyd in the same movie is awesome team up. But then you also have Charles Grodin playing Maitland, who's also having a nervous breakdown. Basically, that's what it is. A popular radio host has a nervous breakdown. His lawyer and his producer think we should have somebody temporarily fill in on the show so he doesn't lose all his contracts and his sponsors and come back to the show, and they keep making their cash cow, keeps producing money, right? They don't have that golden faucet stop running. So they bring in Burns, who's Dan Aykroyd wants to escape because he's on his way to prison, which is kind of like what Jack Nicholson did in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He tried to seem like he was crazy so he wouldn't be locked up in regular jail, which he thought was a better alternative. And then we know it goes bad for him. It's a disaster, but that's more of a drama, more serious. This is like the comedy version. Dan Aykroyd's like, hey, I'm this doctor, pretends to be his own doctor, gets on the radio show to replace the other guy, and then the other guy having a nervous breakdown, and his doctor shows up, and the irony is they get locked away, and the other guy stays out. But then what's funny is the guy, the imposter, gets a chance to actually help somebody, the Walter Matthau character, at the risk of losing his freedom, and then is redeemed. So that makes it kind of a great movie, right? Yeah, I could have easily covered it for Weird September. It's also a feel-good movie, which will come up late. We could have done a couple months down the road, but hey, I'll slide in as a staff pick right here. That's fine. Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat. It was I gave you a lot of history about the distributor and what was going on, and it's connected to these other famous movies that it distributed because they had their hands on some great stuff. Maximum Overdrive, The Gate, Chopping Mall, Chud 2, Blood Diner. They're releasing a lot of kooky stuff that's just worth watching. You know what I mean? And I want you to know their little slice of cinema history that they're a part of, Dirty Dancing, come on, right? But I was like, where do you slide in Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat? It was hard to come up with like a favorite bits list or even like, because it's not a first time watch. It's not fresh. It's one of my favorites. So it's also like, I can also play the game where I'm not going to tell you what my rating is up front, but I'm like, nah, I'm just going to let them know. Binge now, baby. You know what I'm saying? What else can I say about it? I mean, it's Bruce Campbell before I knew who he was, before I had seen Evil Dead. I think I might have seen him in this movie first and then saw the Evil Dead movies as a kid. and then realized who he was, and then saw him later on in like Maniac Cop and all the other stuff that he's done. And then he pops up in Xena and Hercules as well, the TV shows, right? They were really popular when they were doing the action-packed freaking Universal movie things for TV. Um, how have people seen Bruce Campbell now? Probably his cameos in the Spider-Man movies and freaking Doctor Strange Part 2. He's like a cameo actor, right? Yeah, that's kind of crazy to think that Bruce Campbell's star could be fading, and people are like, "Who's Bruce Campbell?" I mean, I guess you got to go watch Ash vs. Evil Dead. You got to go watch the original Evil Dead stuff because now they're doing the remix and the other series. He's not really involved in those, but he's like a character actor, man. He's got like a 40-year plus career. He's great in He's in one of the Waxworks. I think it's part 2 as well. He plays like a spoof of like a 1950s paranormal investigator in Waxworks 2. When the guy's traveling through dimensions, they're also kind of parodies of TV shows and movies, and that's what the jokes are. Parodies of other horror movies in part 2, right? Same with Waxworks 1, but Waxworks 2 uses a different device. They use time travel in the second one, and in the first one, they're just having the wax exhibits come to life. You should really look up Anthony Hitchcock's. Like, you should see what he does, what he's into, the stuff that he put out, some iconic movies. I mean, here's 3 of them: Waxworks 1 and 2, plus the freaking Sundown, Vampires in Retreat. It's a great concept. I mean, they should have just told you it was Count Dracula right off the top. They shouldn't have had the illusion that he was a different count and descended from him or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't think that's the biggest twist in the movie. I think finding faith as a resolution is kind of nuts, but it works somehow in the movie because you're like, where's this weird movie going to wrap up with the vampire conflict, Listen, I often say this. It's like that song Closing Time, right? Have you looked this up? It's like a 90s song. Do you know this grunge thing with music? Do you know Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you looked up Closing Time? Many times have I said it? Well, it's closing time here as well. It's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. What I recommend you do is, dig up Sundown, the Vampire Retreat. I almost said go ahead and get some pumpkin spice, but I'm not. The other reason to cover this movie is we're sliding into Halloween season, which is pumpkin season, pumpkin time. All right. If you're lucky enough to live in a place where the seasons change, maybe some of the leaves are changing color. Maybe you're worried about trick-or-treaters coming to your house. I don't know. You're worried about your costume for the year. You got to dress up as Gladys from that movie Weapons. Who knows? That's going to probably be the costume of the year, right? What else is going on? You got your Halloween movie playlist already lined up for you for October time? I don't know. But this is a good transition movie because it's about vampires and it's also weird, so it can be in Weird September's pack. But it bridges us into the next series because we're going to do like Halloween vibes. We got our October lineup coming up with all those movies. And yeah, go and watch The Couch Trip. What are you doing? You got nothing to do. It's a freaking Monday. You're going to do work? Come on. You're going to do work? I don't think so. Put a little screen in a screen, right? Do your little spreadsheets, right? For your Quicken for work, or make your phone calls to the customer service or whatever. And people are coming to your line as a barista to get those pumpkin spice lattes. Have a little window somewhere just playing, Sundown, the Vampire Retreat.